starts Friday, June 16th at a theater near you.
We've often dealt with issues connected with military cover-ups of UFOs, but there may be an even more extensive cover-up going on surrounding another space-related conspiracy. Over the last few years, some of the world's top scientists were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Joining us now is reporter Linda Delaray. Linda?
John, recently I spoke with sources who believe that these scientists may have died for a reason. They may have known too much.
An MP is calling for more information about the mysterious deaths of two computer experts. Ashad Sharif was found dead on a common near Bristol last October. 2 months earlier, another man had been found dead below Bristol's Clifton Suspension Bridge. Both men were working on defence projects with Marconi, and both were based in the London area.
British scientists working on top-secret projects, allegations of brainwashing, mysterious and sudden deaths, and a Scotland Yard investigation. These may seem like elements of a great spy novel, but as you're about to see, this cloak and dagger story is very real.
My husband was wired. He had wires in his arm, and he had a white rag in his mouth. And his wrist, what I could see was, it burned.
One of the computer experts had bought some rope and put a noose around his neck, tied it to a lamppost, and driven off at top speed.
In some of the cases, there were people who had tied a trestle table to their necks and apparently jumped in a river. There was another with their feet bound and their hands tied behind their back and found face down in the water. Most extremely odd cases, but with the authorities not really concerned.
In 1987, journalist Tony Collins was tipped off about the bizarre deaths of a number of scientists working in the defense industry. Collins' investigation led to false leads and twisted facts. He quickly became convinced that the official verdicts of suicide didn't add up, that these deaths may have been part of a larger, more sinister plot.
And it was very odd that two Asian computer programmers, both working for the same defense company, died within 3 months of each other in Bristol, which is about 120 miles away from London, where they worked. Both of them were talented, ripe for promotion, and had no reason to kill themselves.
Over the past 10 years, more than 30 scientists working in the defense industry in England have died under questionable circumstances. What are the odds that these scientists, who are all working on related projects, could have all committed suicide?
Well, I looked into the statistics on occupational hazards relating to death, and in fact scientists are one of the group least likely to commit suicide. So why have so many died?
When the story began to heat up in the British press, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Scotland Yard, Brian Worth, was called in to investigate.
Statistically, it did look a little odd, and of course there was an awful lot of publicity, and some of the methods were fairly bizarre. But then when you looked into it more closely and took them individually, I found that in the main, in the vast majority, there were very credible reasons, personal reasons, backed up by relatives and friends and individual evidence, to show why these people might have taken the action they did.
There was no reason for suicide. The post-mortem said he was a healthy man. We had our home, and we had 3 lovely daughters, and we were both working, and we didn't have any money problems. The police said it was a well-planned, deliberate act, and that I do not believe.
Alistair Beckham was a specialist in radar technology employed by Plessy Defense Systems. When he didn't pick his wife Mary up at work one Sunday afternoon, she knew something was wrong.
I had this feeling there was something not quite right. So then I looked in the sheds, and this particular shed, we couldn't open the door. So Annette looked into the keyhole, and she said, "Mom, Dad is in the shed. And he's lying over a box. Dad is ill." And I couldn't get in.
After breaking into the shed, they found Alistair Beckham dead from electrocution. He had a white rag stuffed in his mouth and wires running from his body into an electrical socket.
Alistair Beckham was working in an area of defence that many of the other scientists were working in. He was in command and control systems, which are really the key to a modern battle. And someone may have wondered whether he was taking home information which he shouldn't have done. And it's quite possible that, judging by the amount of information they took away after his death, that they perceived him as a potential security risk.
Oh, they took everything, yes. They took all their things and searched the car and to make sure there was nothing belonging to them in the car. And there were some discs here, 4 or 5 discs. So the security said they were nothing important. But so I said, well, leave them, and I, get rid of, put them in a bag and take them to the dump. And they said, well, no, we have better ways of getting rid of these things. And so they took everything away.
Alistair Beckham wasn't the only one to die of electrocution. Only 3 weeks after his death, a similar story surfaced.
Another ex-brigadier from the army had wired his back teeth up, which had metal fillings, to an electrical plug, and electrocuted himself.
Many of those who believe there is a conspiracy, including Tony Collins, also believe that it is entirely possible that these men did commit suicide, but not of their own free will.
I thought it all very James Bond-like, the sort of techniques that they are researching. For example, like planting a sensor in the brain, which can pick up signals emitted from a transmitter outside. And according to the documents I've received, it suggests that these transmitters could have been placed without the recipient's knowledge, which sounds really quite bizarre to me. And there are other techniques for altering the chemical structure of the body so as to make someone who's maybe a little bit worried about finances more depressed, and in fact depressed to the point of suicide. So it sounds far-fetched, it may sound even paranoid, but there are techniques available for the disposal of people who work in the defense industry who could represent possible security risks.
The pattern, if you're looking for one, you have scientists in London who had been working apparently on research projects with applications to space military weapons, dying under mysterious circumstances. The Strategic Defense Initiative goal was, in its extravagant sense, was to create a global defensive military system for the planet. And so what has been going on since then and what is happening today is really a fundamental question that I think a lot of people should have more answers to than they're really finding out right now.
Author Ron Rummel was about to publish a book revealing what he believed to be the real purpose of the Star Wars project when his body was found here in McClay Park in Portland, Oregon. His death was ruled suicide, but few agree with that verdict.
As far as the police and the FBI are concerned, it's case closed. Unfortunately, there's the shocking thing that his murderer, I believe his murderer, is still out there at large.
Why is it you're speaking out?
There have been enough lives taken under the premise of suicide when they were actually very stable individuals. They had families and they had lives to look forward to, and they had every reason to live. And if there is some form of conspiracy out there, then the more people that are talking might end up saving lives in the long run.
Although the Star Wars program no longer officially exists, billions of dollars are still being spent on similar projects. This means secrecy continues to threaten the lives of defense scientists around the world. And if these defense systems protect the planet, who will protect the scientists who build them?
The security is covert. You don't know where it is, or what they're doing, or how they're vetting you or not vetting you. And that creates quite a fear in the defense industry about who's watching you. And the families don't know how their sons died. So they may be right to be worried about that they could be victims as well.
One has to ask just what kind of secret could justify this level of paranoia. A military conspiracy is just one of several possible explanations.
If, in fact, these deaths are murders, the motive, no matter what it is
is of grave concern.
We'll continue to follow this story and keep you posted of further developments.
Coming up, does this frightening evidence prove that aliens are among us?
There's multiple witnesses, there's video, there's pictures.
But what does it all mean?
There are races of beings closer to God than us.
Our special report next.
Over the last few months, we brought you an amazing assortment of phenomena connected with UFO activity.
These range from alien abductions, cattle mutilations, telepathic messages, even genetic experiments.
Now, could all of these activities somehow be connected? Is there some kind of alien master plan that ties all these things together?
Depending on who you talk to, this big picture may be clearer than we think. What you're about to hear may change your perception of our place in the universe. But with all the UFO evidence we've uncovered and encounters, we've drawn some conclusions that may be unsettling, even frightening. Our documentation of the UFO phenomenon comes from almost every source imaginable, from amateur witnesses and NASA videotapes, even from inside human bodies.
Most abductees will talk about extraordinary situations whereby something will be inserted way up their nose, very, very high up. They'll hear a crunching sound as it kind of goes past the cartilage.
Discovery was the shuttle that was up at the time. The camera was on the horizon, and then suddenly there were some strange objects. Glowing lights that seem kind of strange, just kind of floating out there.
There's landing tracks, there's metal samples, there's sounds, there's multiple witnesses, there's video, there's pictures.
A UFO encounter can be disturbing, even when experienced at a safe distance. But when the phenomenon happens under our very noses, or even closer, it can be horrifying.
My wife sleeps with a real light ear. And for something to have happened as major as what had to have happened here with this big steer and her not hear it is unheard of.
I was being invaded. The only way I can explain it is I know what it's like to be raped.
I saw a UFO up in the sky. I saw a blue beam coming down, and the next thing I knew, I was standing on board the UFO. I was handed a baby and told it was mine, and I was forced to hold the baby for a while. I was forced to breastfeed the baby.
But if aliens are visiting Earth and experimenting with cattle, humans, and other forms of life, is it possible that the U.S. government doesn't know about it?
I think the government is hiding a whole host of data. As a scientist, I know all kinds of information I would like that they undoubtedly have. I mean, there are all kinds of questions that they probably have answers to. Undoubtedly motion picture footage of alien beings, dead and alive. Flight of alien craft, gun camera pictures.
Someone very high up is trying to keep a lid on the whole thing.
Why would the government keep all this secret since World War II unless there's a damn good reason?
There may be a good reason, and it's spelled out in a 1960 report prepared by the Brookings Institution.
I would say the Brookings report is very revealing in that it basically says that any contact with extraterrestrial intelligence would upset our economic and social system.
Their reasoning was any advanced civilization in Earth's past that have encountered more primitive civilizations ended up one way or another destroying the primitive civilization.
The government may be trying to protect us from alien contact, but do we need protection? According to many who believe they've suffered a traumatic abduction, the answer is yes.
The aliens are doing genetic experimentation. I have seen the product of their experimentation. I believe they're creating another race that's a hybrid race. I believe it has a lot to do with where we're headed with our destruction of this planet.
Do the aliens have some grand purpose in creating a new race? And where will it exist if this planet has been destroyed?
It's a preparation for the future in which another race of beings will exist in some dimension. Again, this always means we've got to open to dimensions that are not literally of this physical reality. We don't know in what dimension this joined race will exist, but it's as if it's a preparation for the end of the human experiment as we have known it.
The idea of beings living among us but on a different plane is an ancient one. To UFO researchers, the beings are known as aliens. But there's another word for them as well: angels.
There are races of beings closer to God than us, between God and us. They're concerned about our future. They're concerned about our sinful ways, or in our era, our ecologically destructive ways. They're trying to help us straighten things out before it's too late, and that is a very common theme in most world religions.
Have these beings been watching over mankind? Or did they double-cross our government shortly after World War II, as some experts believe?
They made a deal in which they were promised technology, and in return, what the aliens asked was the opportunity to install themselves in underground bases, to abduct a few humans who they would not harm, and who would have their memory erased. The government discovered that many thousands of people were being abducted instead of just a few.
But why would aliens need to abduct thousands of human beings? Some think it's possible that the aliens' own race is dying.
The aliens come from some planet or culture which has destroyed itself. Their own stock is diminished, so they're coming here to replenish that. I mean, these are the great mysteries. I mean, I have all kinds of material about this from the experiencers that I've worked with.
Our government may be taking steps to stop the alien activities on Earth. The Star Wars defense system may have been developed to protect the U.S. not from a Soviet threat, but an alien one.
If they're extraterrestrial and we're shooting at them, that implies an entire weapons development system that's super secret, using up lots of money to develop technology that's way beyond anything we think we have.
Is it possible that a real war between humans and extraterrestrials is underway? While it sounds fantastic, there are detailed contingency plans that prove the U.S. government takes the possibility of invasion very seriously. For example, the Federal Emergency Management Agency publishes guidelines for firefighters in the event of UFO encounters.
The subject of the potential for population involved in mass panic is very real, and it's the responsibility of the fire service agency to provide emergency medical protection to those people whose homes are endangered.
Because of the extraordinary sensitivity of UFO information, it's possible that the hidden truth rests in the hands of a tiny government within the government, a group so secret its existence is unknown even to the president.
As early as 1950, findings were classified by a small group in Washington. It's my feeling that some of the best films have been secreted away and are withheld at an above top secret level. Let's get hold of it.
I think the authors of our Constitution recognize the dangers of big government and the dangers when government is allowed to do whatever it wants. The people have to have some control, some say for what the government is doing in all its spheres.
George Knapp has joined us via satellite tonight. Welcome to Encounters. George, what's taken so long? After almost 50 years, where's the evidence that can prove to every skeptic that UFOs really exist?
I think the best evidence that exists is in the hands of the government. I feel this because they're the ones that have the power to collect this stuff.
George, what do you say to fellow journalists who ridicule you for spending so much time and effort investigating UFOs?
The criticism is coming from other journalists who have not bothered to take a look at the information, who haven't gone out into the field, interviewed the witnesses, looked at the available evidence. Sure, there's a lot of it that's baloney, but there's a core of information that simply can't be explained away because we don't want to believe in it, because we want to equate it all with tabloids. Girl gives birth to 52 UFO babies, that sort of thing. There is a core of information that simply can't be dismissed.
Now, about alien abductions, we've heard a lot of theories. What do you think?
I think a great number of these cases are explainable, either because of media indoctrination or people who have mental problems or dreams or misinterpretations of what they're seeing. However, there remain a core of cases that cannot be explained. I think the work of people like Bud Hopkins and Dr. John Mack and David Jacobs and John Carpenter suggests that there is some unknown intelligence that is attempting to interact with humans for unknown reasons.
So what happens now, George? When will the real story finally be told?
The best evidence, in my opinion, is in the hands of government, military, and intelligence agencies. They're the ones that have been collecting it all these years. They're the ones that have conducted the secret studies, spied on UFO researchers, infiltrated UFO groups, lied about the information that they have, withheld UFO files, spread disinformation to muddy the waters. They're the ones that have the information. And it's going to take an informed and angered public for us to get at it. I hope that happens. I really do.
Thank you, George. Encounters will be back in a moment.
Coming up, if you've ever thought of calling a psychic hotline.
We married the new age with the technological age.
Some important tips when you tie your fate to the phone.
The other people there were not psychic whatsoever.
Next.
We've all seen ads for psychics who guarantee to tell you your future for a price. But you have to be careful. The only thing that some of these so-called psychics can predict is that your wallet will be a little bit lighter.
Sadly, it seems that many unscrupulous people take advantage of the fact that, to quote the Firesign Theater, there's a seeker born every minute.
But what do you do if you do want some of this psychic advice? Well, to take a cue from the Boy Scouts, be prepared.
This is the live psychic line from the Psychic Center.
Thank you for calling the Psychic Connection.
You have reached Canadian Psychic Network.
Welcome to the Latoya Jackson Psychic Line, brought to you by the Zodiac.
Have a question about your love life? Worried about your health? Dial the Psychic. Want to know your future? Looking for that winning lotto number? Just dial 900.
Everyone's predisposed to psychics. We married the new age with the technological age. We sort of brought psychics onto the information highway.
So, Rob, this is where it all happened?
Yeah, this is where it all started.
Robert Hoffman is Vice President of Production at Information Corporation, a Baltimore-based media production house, and parent company of Psychic Friends Network and the Professional Psychic Counselors Network.
We looked at the phenomena of psychic businesses, psychic phone services around the country, and we were approached by Linda Georgian and Dionne Warwick, who had a really neat idea to help us make this 100 times better than anyone's ever seen a psychic phone service.
And according to Hoffman, those ideas helped Information become one of the largest and most successful companies in the growing multi-million-dollar interactive phone service industry, an industry that promises to put you, the caller, in direct contact with the psychic of your choice. How many calls do you think you get a day?
I would say somewhere around between 7,500 and 10,000 calls a day.
And just how long does the average call last?
Between 8 and 12 minutes is the average call. $3.99 a minute, and you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's for a 10-minute call. That'd be around $40.
That's $40 times 10,000 callers a day. That averages out to nearly $3 million per week and almost $146 million per year. Clearly a lucrative business. But what are callers getting for their money? We asked Tabitha, a former employee of the Professional Psychic Counselors Network, to describe a typical call in detail.
It usually took about 3 minutes for the average person to dial in, to listen to the menu. You might listen to 10 psychics describe, or 10 counselors describe their specialty, and usually each announcement ran about a minute. So you could spend $40 at $4 a minute just listening to find out who was on the line before you made a choice.
$40 to listen to a recorded message. The clock keeps ticking, of course, after the recording ends and the psychic picks up the phone. It's easy to forget how costly that psychic's time can be, as Tabitha once reminded a caller. He was repeatedly seeking her advice on a legal matter.
He had spent thousands of dollars, and I said to him at one point, you know, it costs you about $240 an hour to talk to psychics. A good attorney only charges $150. Wouldn't you be better off talking to attorneys? And he said, well, he'd never figured it out by the hour. He was only thinking of it by the minute.
even if you're aware of exactly how much your call is costing, you may feel it's money well spent. After all, an accurate prediction of the future can be priceless. But is it even possible to get a psychic reading over the phone?
Absolutely, you can give an accurate reading over the telephone lines.
Vox is a highly reputable psychic living in Los Angeles, California. She formerly worked as a phone psychic.
If you pick up a phone and a person's voice is on the other end, their voice vibrations can literally give you enough of something to give a reading by.
A legitimate psychic can give a telephone reading, according to Vox, but many of those $240 an hour phone psychics are anything but legitimate.
I have, as a matter of fact, worked on a line, on a psychic hotline, where I knew for a specific fact that the other people there, or some of the people that I was working with, were not psychic whatsoever.
To be a psychic on the Psychic Friends Network, usually you have to be referred by another psychic. You can't train somebody to be a psychic. Either you're a psychic or you're not.
Hoffman says all of the psychic operators working at Psychic Friends and the Professional Psychic Counselors Network are tested prior to hiring.
We have a panel of psychics who review applications of potential psychics. We investigate their backgrounds, we interview their references. All of our psychics have had some type of psychic experience or practice or counseling practice somewhere else prior to working on the Psychic Friends Network.
I never said to anyone at any time that I was a psychic. There was no mention of do you have psychic ability, are you a psychic? And I certainly never said to anyone that I was.
Now we have a communication from a woman in Denver who, I have to say, claims that she worked for the Professional Psychic Counselors Network.
Yes.
You're familiar with the Professional Psychic Counselors
Sure.
Network. And she says that she has absolutely never had any kind of psychic ability at all, but she worked for the network.
Does she work for us now?
I don't think so.
Well, she doesn't work for us now. I don't know about the woman. I don't know if she ever worked for us. You know, I don't know her name, but I'm glad she doesn't work for us because she says she isn't psychic, and right now she doesn't work for us.
So how do you know if you're talking with a real psychic? Vox says there are certain red flags you should be aware of.
If that person keeps asking you questions, if the person says you're in a relationship and you're not, I mean, it's pretty obvious. But, you know, get specifics, get dates, get times. Ask them, like, do you see any kinds of arguments that I've had? Who with? I mean, test them a little bit. Don't gush out to a psychic all your problems. Let the psychic tell you what they see. If they are totally off, you should know about it. And don't just think that because you called what is supposedly a psychic network that you're really talking to a psychic.
As with everything, it pays to remember the adage, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true.
As we've seen, people who claim to be able to tap into the paranormal have limitless opportunities to take advantage of the trusting. There are many reputable psychics out there, but you need to be careful.
Encounters will be back in a moment.
Coming up, dinosaurs ruled the planet 65 million years ago.
Dinosaurs are really rather advanced creatures.
But what if they had survived?
The mammals might still be little rat-like creatures living in holes in the ground.
Next on Encounters.
65 million years ago, the dinosaurs vanished. The reason for this disappearance has been one of science's greatest mysteries, but that mystery may be over.
The dinosaurs may have been the victim of an extraterrestrial accident, an accident that might happen to us.
Here's our story. If a huge asteroid hadn't slammed into the Earth 65 million years ago, life on Earth may not look anything like we know it today.
If the dinosaurs hadn't become extinct, the mammals might still be little rat-like creatures living in holes in the ground, coming out at night. And the reptiles might still dominate the environment.
But it may not have been this massive collision alone that wiped out the giant reptiles. In fact, a highly unusual aspect of the impact site in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula seems more to blame.
The area is unique in the sense that it's abundant in sulfur. And it was this impact into this sulfur-rich region then that spewed out a tremendous amount of sulfur gas.
So while dust and debris would settle to Earth over several months, this sulfuric haze stayed in the sky for decades, engulfing the Earth in an icy 20-year winter.
Over a period of hours to days, the Earth would have gotten blacker and blacker and actually gotten so dark that you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. Much of the Earth would have been below freezing, and many areas in the coastal areas and island areas would have been only slightly above freezing.
The end result is, of course, history, but it's a history that may just as easily have had a very different ending.
Had it hit anywhere else on Earth, it would not have had such a devastating effect. It was an ecological disaster. What happened was the climate changed. A lot of populations were wiped out or reduced to levels where they were no longer viable.
Had that impact not occurred, we would have probably evolved from reptiles rather than from mammals. I think people don't appreciate the fact, except possibly those that paid very good attention during Jurassic Park, that dinosaurs were really rather advanced creatures, and the advanced dinosaurs walked upright, had bifocal vision, and opposing digits. And so it's not too far of a leap in faith to believe that an intelligent being might have evolved from these basically giant lizards.
Encounters will be right back.
If you would like to contact us here at Encounters, write to Encounters, P.O. Box 36B47, Los Angeles, California, 90036. To contact us by phone, call 213-525-1UFO. That's 213-525-1836. Or to contact us online, visit the Encounters forum on CompuServe by typing Go Encounters or the following number. And thank you for your interest in Encounters.
Here in the United States, UFO investigators are often regarded as cranks, as objects of ridicule. But in Japan, this is not the case.
Recently, the Japanese government committed over $54 million to partially fund construction of the world's largest center for UFO research.
Now, why Japan, one might ask? Well, the Japanese have been monitoring UFOs for at least 600 years. This ancient Japanese text may be the oldest written account of a UFO sighting.
Back in the early 13th century, there's a town called Hakui, and some of the people there had spotted a UFO, or an object which was sort of round and like a serving tray type.
The Hakui sighting became legendary, and the town turned into the unofficial UFO capital of Japan. Trudy Notohara is the American liaison for the Hakui City Hall.
More and more people, when they do take a vacation in that area, which is a very nice town, they usually park out by the ocean and see if they would spot anything. So what happened is that Hakui City Hall became like the center station for all of Japan.
And then during a UFO conference in Hakui a few years ago, the city received the official stamp of approval from Japan's highest authority.
Back in 1990, Kai-Fu Prime Minister had sent a message to their symposium saying that what you're doing is absolutely wonderful.
The letter was followed by a check for $54 million. It was the central government's contribution for the development of a huge UFO study center, the world's largest. When the three-story institute opens in the summer of 1996, it will house a library, a theater, a learning center, and museum exhibits. Now, just why is it so many of us want to believe in the paranormal? Maybe it's our way of expanding the horizons of our experience. The hidden truth we're all looking for just may be something to look forward to, something wonderful. I'm John Marshall. Good night.
What turns you on?
I always ask people for a massage.
Where's the most exciting place you've had sex?
We went out to my car and started making out.
What was your last blind date like?
Frustrating.
Disastrous.
Horrible.
Great.
Find out how you rate when it comes to love. Don't miss Sex and Romance, a test for the 90s, Monday at 9, 8 Central.
Stay tuned for The X-Files next.